Hey everyone, and welcome back to AIPRP.
Yes, welcome back.
Today, we're diving into some pretty wild stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, formerly Kanye West, right?
right.
He's selling Swastika t-shirts on his website.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
it is.
It's a process.
It is.
We're going to try to, navigate all this responsibly
Right.
and thoughtfully, but,
Yeah.
yeah, buckle up.
It's definitely a situation that's causing shockwaves, I think.
Yeah,
It raises so many questions about where Ye's head's at.
right.
And honestly, where society is
Right,
at.
how did we even get here?
Yeah.
So our main source today is this article from NBC News
Okay.
that details this whole saga.
Okay.
It reads like a fever dream, honestly.
Wow.
So picture this. Super Bowl Sunday,
Okay.
game is on,
Right.
and a local commercial pops up in the Los Angeles area.
Okay.
It's Ye,
Okay.
not rapping, not performing,
Right.
but in a dentist chair,
Talking about his new teeth, of all things.
of all things.
And then he directs viewers to his website, Yeezy.com.
Yeah.
It's this bizarre low-budget ad, almost like it was shot on an iPhone
It's
in
sort of like
someone's basement.
DIY, which is kind of jarring,
Yeah,
coming from you.
right.
But, okay. So people are curious.
Sure.
They go to the website,
Right.
expecting maybe some new music or a fashion line drop.
Right.
Who knows?
Right.
Instead, boom, the only thing for sale is a t-shirt with a black swastika
Wow.
on a white background.
Ah.
Just that. Nothing else.
Yeah.
Except this cryptic HHO1 label
Okay.
and a $20 price tag.
Wow. It's incredibly jarring, especially considering his X accounts was deactivated around this time for a barrage of anti-Semitic posts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you've got this timeline, offensive posts, account deactivation, weird Super Bowl dental ad, and then bam, swastika shirts.
Oh.
It's a wild sequence of events, to say the least.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, the Anti-Defamation League,
Right.
the ADL, immediately condemned the shirts,
Right.
calling it blatant anti-Semitism,
Right.
pointing out that this symbol represents hate and oppression.
Yeah, and they even interpret the HHO1 as potential code
Oh, really?
for Heil Hitler, which adds another layer of complexity to this.
Absolutely. And here's where it gets even weirder.
Okay.
He had previously claimed on X that he wouldn't sell swastika shirts
Oh, really?
because people could be harmed wearing them.
Wow.
Talk about
Yeah.
a contradiction.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, what's the intention here? Is this a calculated publicity stunt?
Right.
Is it a reflection of a deeper, more troubling ideology?
Right.
Or is it something else entirely?
Right before we dive deeper into those questions, we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What are your initial reactions to this whole situation? What stands out to you?
Yeah, let us know.
Hit us up in the comments.
Yeah.
And while you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe to AIPOP for more deep dives into the stories that matter.
Yeah, for sure. It's important to remember that Ye has a history of making anti-Semitic remarks.
Right.
He was even locked out of his Twitter account in 2022 for similar reasons.
Right.
So while this latest incident might seem shocking,
Yeah.
it unfortunately fits into a larger pattern of behavior.
That's what makes this so concerning, right?
Yeah,
It's not just an isolated incident.
right.
It raises questions about the normalization of hate speech and the potential for that to translate into real-world harm.
Absolutely. When someone with a platform as massive as Ye's engages in this kind of rhetoric, it can have a ripple effect,
Yeah.
influencing others
Right.
and potentially inciting violence or discrimination.
And that's a terrifying thought.
It is.
But it's a conversation we need to have.
It is.
We can't afford to ignore these issues,
You can't.
no matter how uncomfortable they might be.
Exactly. Yeah, it really makes you think about the power of symbols, and how a simple design choice can carry so much weight both historically and in the present moment.
It's true. That swastika is just so instantly recognizable
Yes.
and evokes such strong emotions.
Absolutely.
It's not just a random design element.
Right.
It's loaded with meaning.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes this situation so unsettling.
Exactly. It's like he's weaponizing a symbol of hate. And in a way, it's even more disturbing because of the stark simplicity of the design.
Yeah.
There's no nuance, no attempt at reinterpretation. It's just a bold declaration.
Yeah, it's almost like shock value for shock value's sake.
Right.
But then again, this is Yen we're talking about.
Right.
He's always kind of pushing boundaries.
Yeah.
Challenging conventions, whether it's through his music, his fashion, or even his personal life.
That's true, but there's a difference between pushing boundaries and promoting hate.
Right.
And I think this situation really blurs that line.
Yeah.
It forces us to ask, where does artistic expression end and hate speech begin?
It's a tough question, and there's
Yeah.
no easy answer. But I think it's important to acknowledge the potential harm that this kind of imagery can cause, especially considering Ye's massive following and the influence he has, particularly on young people.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the immediate impact,
Right.
but the long-term consequences.
Right.
These kinds of symbols can normalize hate, desensitize people to its dangers,
Right.
and create a climate where prejudice and discrimination are more readily accepted.
It's a scary thought, but it's a reality we have to confront.
It is.
And it's not just Ye's responsibility, it's also on platforms like X to take action to moderate harmful content and create a space where hate speech isn't given a platform.
Right. It's a complex issue. And there are valid concerns about censorship and freedom of speech.
Sure.
But I think there needs to be a balance.
Yeah.
We can't allow platforms to become breeding grounds for hate and intolerance.
It's like we need to protect free speech,
Right.
but we also need to protect people from the very real harm that hate speech can cause.
Yes.
And finding that balance is crucial.
It is. And it's an ongoing debate that we as a society need to engage in.
Yeah.
But coming back to this specific situation, I think the ADL's response is particularly interesting.
Yeah, they didn't hold back,
They didn't.
calling it out for what it is.
Right.
And I think it's important to have organizations like the ADL
Yes.
that are dedicated to combating anti-Semitism and other forms of bigotry, speaking up and holding people accountable.
Absolutely. Their condemnation carries weight, and it shines a light on the severity of this situation.
Yeah.
But it also raises some interesting questions.
Yeah.
For example, their interpretation of HH01 as code for Heil Hitler,
Right.
while plausible,
Yeah.
it's still speculation.
Right. We don't know for sure what he intended with that label.
Right.
It could be a deliberate reference to Nazi ideology,
All right.
or it could be something else entirely.
Right.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that ambiguity even as we condemn the use of the swastika itself.
I agree. It's important to be precise in our critique, to avoid making assumptions, and to focus on the concrete evidence.
Yeah.
And in this case, the evidence is pretty damning.
No doubt about it. But while we're on the topic of the ADL, it's worth taking a moment to understand their role and significance.
Yes.
Especially for those who might not be familiar with the organization.
Yeah, they've been around for over a century.
Wow.
And they've been at the forefront of fighting anti-Semitism and all forms of hate. They do a lot of research advocacy and education work, and they play a vital role in pushing back against hate speech and discrimination.
So their voice carries a lot of weight in this kind of situation.
It does.
And I think it's important for us as individuals to be aware of organizations like the ADL, to support their work and to learn from their expertise.
Absolutely, because ultimately fighting hate is a collective effort.
Right.
It's about all of us taking a stand, speaking out against injustice, and creating a world where everyone feels safe and respected.
And hey, while we're on the subject of collective effort, we want to hear from you.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on the ADL's response? Do you agree with their interpretation of HH01? Let us know in the comments.
Let us know.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to AIPRP for more deep dives into the complex issues of our time.
It's fascinating how this whole situation is unfolding in the digital age, with social media playing such a central role.
Yeah, it's like, on the one hand, platforms like X give a voice to the voiceless,
Right.
allow for open dialogue, and
Right.
connect people across the globe.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, they can also be used to spread hate,
Right.
incite violence,
Right.
and amplify dangerous ideologies.
And it's a challenge to find that balance, to figure out how to harness the positive aspects of social media while mitigating the negative ones.
Yeah, it feels like we're constantly playing catch-up,
Yeah.
trying to adapt to the rapid evolution of technology and the ways in which it's shaping our world.
It's true, and it's a conversation that needs to be ongoing, involving policymakers, tech companies, and everyday users like ourselves, because ultimately the future of the internet and how it impacts our lives is something we all have a stake in.
Well said. And speaking of stakes, let's bring this back to Ye and his swastika shirt controversy.
Okay.
Because beyond the symbolic and social implications,
Right, yeah.
there's also a financial aspect to this whole situation.
That's an interesting point. By selling these shirts, is Ye profiting off of hate? Is he deliberately trying to provoke outrage and generate publicity, knowing that it will likely translate into sales?
It's a cynical view,
Yeah.
but it's not entirely implausible.
Right.
After all, Ye is a savvy businessman.
Yeah.
and he's no stranger to controversy.
And it's worth noting that this isn't the first time he's faced backlash for his actions. He's lost brand deals, been criticized by his peers and alienated fans.
Yeah?
But he always seems to bounce back, often stronger than before.
It's like he thrives on this kind of attention, whether it's positive or negative.
Right.
And that raises questions about the role of celebrity culture and how it incentivizes outrageous behavior.
It's a complex dynamic, and it's one that we need to be more critical of. We need to hold celebrities accountable for their actions
Right.
and not reward them for behavior that is harmful or dangerous.
Absolutely. And we need to be more discerning as consumers, supporting those who align with our values and rejecting those who don't, because ultimately we have a choice in who we give our attention to and who we allow to influence our culture.
Well said. And it's a reminder that we all have a responsibility to be thoughtful, critical, and engaged citizens, both online and offline.
Couldn't agree more. And speaking of engagement, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the financial aspect of this situation? Do you think Ye is profiting off hate? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into the stories that make you think, that challenge your perspectives, and that hopefully spark some meaningful conversations.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, that's what we're all about here on AIP Up.
Yeah.
Engaging in thoughtful dialogue, exploring complex issues, and trying to make sense of the world around us.
Exactly. And this whole Ye situation with the swastika shirts, the Super Bowl ad, the deactivated X account, the ADL's response.
Right.
It's a microcosm of so many larger conversations happening right now.
About freedom of expression, about hate speech, about the role of social media, about celebrity culture, about the rise of intolerance.
Right.
It's a lot to unpack.
It really is. And I don't think there are any easy answers, but I do think it's important to keep asking the questions, to keep challenging ourselves and each other, to keep striving for a better understanding.
I agree. And I think one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves in this context is,
Yeah.
how do we reconcile freedom of expression with the responsibility to prevent the spread of hate speech?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, we want to protect people's right to express themselves freely, even if we disagree with what they're saying.
Right.
But on the other hand, we also have a responsibility to protect vulnerable groups from hate speech and incitement to violence.
And finding that balance, that sweet spot where we can uphold both principles,
Right.
is incredibly challenging. It requires nuance, empathy, and a willingness to engage in difficult conversations.
Yeah, and it requires us to be aware of the historical context, to understand the power of symbols and language, and to recognize the potential harm that hate speech can inflict.
It's not about silencing dissenting voices or stifling debate. It's about creating a space where everyone feels safe and respected, where ideas can be challenged without resorting to hate and bigotry.
Right, and it's about recognizing that words have consequences.
Yes.
And that even seemingly innocuous expressions can contribute to a climate of intolerance and prejudice.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Ye's swastika shirt controversy, we're left with a lot to ponder.
Yeah.
We've explored the events, the symbolism, the social and cultural implications, the ethical dilemmas.
And we've hopefully sparked some thought-provoking questions in your own mind.
I hope so.
What do you think about the balance between freedom of expression and preventing hate speech? How do we hold individuals and platforms accountable for spreading harmful messages? What role do we each play in creating a more just and equitable society, both online and offline?
These are questions worth grappling with, worth discussing, worth debating.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we encourage you to continue the conversation in the comments below.
Yes.
Share your thoughts, your insights, your perspectives.
Yeah.
Let's learn from each other. Let's challenge each other. Let's grow together.
Because ultimately, that's what this deep dive is all about.
Exactly.
Expanding our understanding, broadening our horizons, and engaging in meaningful dialogue.
And hey, while you're down there in the comments, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to AIPRP for more deep dives into the stories that matter.
Yes.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those conversations flowing.